In this arena, skill is measured in milliseconds and every point matters. The climb is brutal. Are you ready for the fight of your life?
I used to think the scariest things about gaming late at night were jump scares, toxic players, or losing rank because of some kid who thought trolling was funny. I was wrong. I learned that the real horror isn't on the screen, it's what's happening behind you when you're too distracted to notice. This happened when I was 17, during the peak of my gaming obsession. I still lived with my parents in Chandler, Arizona, in a big 2-story house tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. They traveled often for their consulting jobs, so I had the place to myself more than any kid my age should have. It was a July night, the kind where the heat sticks to the pavement like glue even at 2 in the morning. Inside my room, though, the AC blasted cold air against my back. While I sat hunched over my PC, drowning myself in Call of Duty matches as if they were the only thing that existed. The glow from my monitors was the only source of light. I had been in that chair for so long, my legs felt numb, but when you're grinding, rank hours slip by like minutes. By around 2:15 a.m., I queued up for another round of Search and Destroy. I remember that exact time because I glanced at a text from my girlfriend before she fell asleep. She'd left me unread, but I didn't care. I was locked in. The pre-game lobby was its usual circus of trash talk, loud music, mic-peaking middle schoolers, nothing new. Except for one player, his gamer tag wasn't a name. It was a string of binary code 0101101. No emblem, no clan tag, no rank, just nothing. I brushed it off as a Smurf account, but the way this player acted didn't feel like a Smurf. It didn't feel human at all. For the first 3 rounds, he never moved from spawn. My teammates joked about the free kills, laughing as they farmed him. But in round 4, everything shifted into something I still can't fully explain. I was holding an angle near a doorway when my character suddenly dropped dead. No gunshot, no enemy in sight. The kill feed simply said, "Sure, 1001 killed you." What the hell? I leaned closer to the screen. Nice hacks, bro. I typed it into all chat, waiting for the usual backlash, but the feed stayed blank. No reply, no toxicity, nothing. Next round, things escalated. I spawned in, moved a few feet, then my character froze. My keyboard stopped responding. The mouse did nothing. Even the escape key was dead. Then, in my headset, a voice whispered clearer than any in-game audio, uncompressed, almost as if the speaker was right behind me. "Turn around, Michael." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Nobody on that platform knew my real name. I'd always been careful. My gamer tag was Sax, Viper, Shucks. My bio was empty. My Steam and Discord accounts were scrubbed clean. Nobody should have known who I was. Slowly, heart hammering, I turned around in my chair. Nothing. Just my closed bedroom door and the shadows of laundry I'd ignored for days. I shook my head and laughed nervously. "Sleep deprivation," I muttered. "Has to be." But somewhere deep inside, a part of me already knew this wasn't fatigue. This wasn't normal. When I put the headset back on, the voice channels were full of chaos. "Dude, my PC just shut off, my screen's black. What the hell is this guy DDoSing us?" Only one enemy player was alive. 01000101. Then the voice returned. "Calm, too calm. I like the blue shirt you're wearing, but you should really close the blinds. The neighbors can see." I froze. I looked down. I was wearing a faded blue t-shirt. My throat tightened. My left window, where one slat in the blinds had been broken for months, left a small 3-inch gap, just big enough for someone outside to see in. I turned toward it slowly. Only darkness stared back. I jumped forward and slammed the blinds shut with shaking hands. A Discord notification chimed on my second monitor, a direct message. From 010101. It contained a single audio file. My instincts told me to turn off the PC run screen, anything except open it. But some sick, morbid curiosity made me click play. It was a recording. heavy footsteps on hardwood, a door creaking open, and then my dog Buster barking. Not a random dog, not some generic audiophile, my dog, the same bark I'd heard my whole life. The recording ended with a whisper, "I'm in." I tore off the headset so violently it hit the wall. The sudden silence of my room felt suffocating. Then I heard it. From downstairs, slow, deliberate footsteps. My entire body went rigid. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but the signal bars flickered from full to zero. No service. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it over the AC. Then, in the hallway outside my room, the motion sensor light flicked on. I saw it through the gap under my door. A shadow. Feet. Someone was standing there, just standing. Not knocking, not talking, just waiting. I grabbed the only thing that resembled a weapon in my room, an old aluminum baseball bat from my Little League days. I wrapped both hands around it, the metal slick with sweat. The doorknob turned, slow, too slow. Like whoever was out there wanted me to hear every millimeter of movement. Please be locked. Please, for once, be locked. The knob hit the end. Locked. I exhaled shakily. Then my speakers crackled to life. "Open the door, Michael. It's rude to ignore guests." I lunged at my PC and ripped the power cable straight from the outlet. The room went pitch black except for the faint street light filtering through the blinds and the light under the door. "I'm calling the cops," I finally shouted. A soft laugh answered me from the hallway, a quiet, amused chuckle, then click. The unmistakable sound of a lockpick, metal scraping pins. I backed away, bat-raised breath shaking. The lock popped, the door creaked open. I swung with everything I had at nothing. The hallway was empty, and that's when the panic truly set in, not because he wasn't there, but because it meant he could have been anywhere. I bolted into my parents' room, slammed the door, locked it, and grabbed the landline. Static, then breathing. Then the same voice, "You can't hide. I have the master key." That was when I realized this wasn't random. This was planned. Whoever this was, he'd prepared for this. In pure terror, I ran to the window, shoved it open, and jumped. The drop from the second floor onto the patio was brutal. Pain shot up my ankle, and I bit down hard to stop from screaming. But adrenaline didn't care about broken bones. I limped through the yard, burst through the side gate, and ran barefoot into the street. "Help!" I screamed. "Please, someone's in my house!" Lights flicked on across the neighborhood. Mrs. Higgins opened her door. I ran to her porch like my life depended on it, because it did. The police arrived minutes later. They swept the house, every room, every closet, and they found nothing. But the scariest part wasn't that they found nothing. It was the possibility that maybe he never left. The police tried their best to calm me down that night, but there's a certain kind of fear that doesn't fade with comforting words or steady voices. A fear that doesn't care about logic or reassurance. It burrows deeper the more people try to explain it away. They finished their sweep after 20 minutes. No intruder, no signs of forced entry, just me, a shaken kid wrapped in a blanket on the curb, while officers exchanged confused glances behind flashlights and K9 harnesses. "Son," one of them said gently, "we didn't find anyone." No open doors, no broken windows, nothing. I wanted to believe him, God, I wanted to. But I could still feel the presence of that voice in my room echoing in the back of my skull, like it had left an imprint. There was someone in the house, I insisted, my voice trembling. He was inside. He talked to me through my speakers. He knew my name. The officer sighed, the kind of sigh people make when they're trying not to dismiss you. "We'll file a report, but these late-night gaming sessions can mess with your head. Sleep deprivation stress, it can cause hallucinations. Hallucinations don't pick locks. Hallucinations don't whisper your name from 2 feet behind your chair. Hallucinations don't send audio recordings of your own dog, but they didn't see what I saw." Mrs. Higgins insisted I stay inside her house until my parents got home. I didn't argue. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my parents flew back. They listened, hugged me, said they believed me, but the doubt in their eyes was loud. They installed a pricey security system anyway, mostly to make themselves feel better. 12 cameras, motion sensors, panic buttons. Safe, secure, untouchable. That's what we told ourselves. 2 days later, I decided I was done with my old room. I couldn't even walk past it without feeling that cold whisper of dread crawl up my spine. I asked my parents if I could move into the downstairs guest room. They agreed immediately. Around noon, I went upstairs to pack my setup, PC tower, dual monitors, headset, everything. Even being in the room made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. It was like the air itself remembered what had happened. I disconnected cables, shoved accessories into boxes, and unplugged the tower. As I pulled it forward for the first time in months, something caught my eye. A small black box, palm-sized, taped behind the PC. A wire trailing from it into one of the rear USB ports I rarely touched. My stomach dropped. I peeled it off with trembling fingers. It was a Raspberry Pi, a tiny computer that hackers and tech hobbyists use for custom projects. Except this one had a micro SD card inserted into the side. For a moment, I just stared at it. I shouldn't have opened it. Everything in my body told me not to. But fear does strange things to your curiosity. I slid the micro SD card into my laptop. It held a single folder, observation log. My mouth went dry. Inside were hundreds of video files. I clicked one at random. It opened to a dimly lit shot of my room from above, angled downward from the ceiling. Not my webcam. Something else. Another file me at my desk gaming. Another me sleeping. Another me changing shirts. Months of footage. Then the realization hit me like a punch straight to the chest. The camera angle. The lens height. The field of view. He wasn't using my computer. He wasn't using my webcam. He had been using the smoke detector. The one installed directly above my chair. The one with that tiny, barely noticeable red blinking light. I felt sick. I felt violated in a way I didn't know was possible. I clicked the final video, the one with the most recent timestamp from the night of the incident, about 2:30 a.m. The screen showed my room, empty, lights still on from gaming. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the closet door opened, slowly. A man stepped out, dressed head to toe in black, ski mask, gloves, boots. He had been in my closet while I was screaming at the door, while I was jumping out the window, while police swept the house. He strolled casually into the center of the room as if he lived there. Then he looked up directly into the smoke detector camera and raised a hand. He waved. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. He pulled his mask up just enough to reveal a smile. Wide, crooked, unnatural. He mouthed 2 words, "Game over." The video continued. He walked out of my room, down the hallway, and to the attic access ladder. He pulled a ring of keys from his pocket keys I'd never seen before and climbed up. The video ended. I sat frozen. It felt like my body wasn't mine anymore. I sprinted downstairs, practically fell into the living room, and screamed for my parents. They ran in panicked. I couldn't speak at first. I just shoved the laptop toward them with shaking hands. When they saw the footage, their faces turned white. My dad called the police immediately. This time, officers arrived with a different energy, serious, grim. They didn't treat me like a delusional teenager. They searched the house again, but this time they went further, pulling down the attic ladder, crawling into the insulation, combing through every square foot. After an hour, one of the officers returned. His expression told me everything before he said a single word. "There's a crawl space in the attic," he said quietly, "deep in the back corner. Someone's been living in it." I felt my breath leave my body. They found blankets, food wrappers, water bottles, a small power bank, and worst of all, a notebook filled with times, dates, and descriptions of my daily routine. He had been watching me for months, tracking me, studying me. The police didn't find him. They didn't find footprints leading out. They didn't find fingerprints on the pie. It was like he vanished into the desert air. Nobody ever figured out who he was, or why he chose me, or how he bypassed a locked house repeatedly. We moved out within the month. I threw my entire PC setup in the trash. I never played Call of Duty again, and I never slept in a room that had a smoke detector within arm's reach. Even today, years later, I still catch myself glancing at ceilings, at vents, at any small dark corner where a camera could hide. Because once someone watches you without your knowledge, once someone speaks your name in a room you thought was safe, your home never feels like home again. And every time I hear an unexplained noise at night, a creak, a whisper, a footstep, I wonder if somewhere in some hidden crawl space or forgotten attic, he's still watching. Back in high school, I used to spend hours playing this obscure MMO called Ethereum Online. It wasn't massive like WoW, but the community was tight-knit and the game world had this haunting, lonely vibe that weirdly comforted me. The servers finally shut down in 2016, and I figured that was it. The world of Ethereum would stay a memory. 6 months ago, I found out how wrong I was. At the time, I was living alone in a rented house in rural Oregon. I worked night shift, completely remote data entry, at hours when normal people were asleep. The nights were long, quiet, and suffocating. My house sat at the edge of a forest miles from the nearest town. When the wind blew, the branches scraped my siding like fingernails. When it rained, everything felt buried under the weight of the trees. One night, around 3:00 a.m., I was doom scrolling through a dead Reddit thread when I found something strange, a post about a legacy private server, Ethereum Online. 0 upvotes. One comment, a link. The comment read, "For those who want to go home. 1-to-1 recreation. No mods." I clicked the link without thinking. Loneliness does that to you. The download was tiny, way too tiny for an MMO, but I assumed they compressed the files. I installed it, made a rogue named Strider, same as years ago, and logged in. Immediately, I felt the hit of nostalgia. The music, the soft, melancholic strings looped exactly like I remembered. The starting town was identical down to the cracks in the cobblestone, but it was empty. No players, no chat messages, server population, 1,500, just me. It was weirdly peaceful. I figured it was probably hosted in Europe or something. I started grinding levels like old times, enjoying the quiet. Around 5:30 a.m., the sky outside my window turning pale blue, I headed into the Whispering Woods, a higher level zone. I was organizing my inventory when I saw movement on the edge of my screen. Another player. He stepped out from behind a tree wearing nothing but the default starter clothing, no armor, no weapon. His username floated above his head. Observer. I blinked. Finally, someone else. I typed, "Yo, didn't think anyone else still played this thing." He didn't respond. He didn't emote. He didn't move naturally. Characters in Ethereum have idle animations. They shift, wait, breathe, blink. But Observer stood perfectly still like a statue. When I moved left, his character instantly snapped to face me. No turn animation, just a glitchy, jarring snap. A chill crept up my spine. "You a dev or something?" I typed. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a chat bubble appeared above his head. "Observer, come with me. I have something to show you." Something about the message set off alarm bells, but curiosity pushed harder than fear. It always does. That's the thing about horror. It only needs you to make one bad decision. I followed him. He didn't run. He didn't even speed walk, just moved in this slow, deliberate pace. It took us nearly 20 minutes to reach the edge of the map. But something was wrong. The invisible wall wasn't there. The world just continued. But the terrain didn't look like Ethereum anymore. The high fantasy grass textures faded into something flat and gray. The trees became low poly vertical poles arranged in straight lines, telephone poles. I leaned forward in my chair, my pulse picking up. We were no longer in the game world. We were walking down a modern street. The houses were rough, polygonal shapes like some broken early 2000s tech demo. Driveways, mailboxes, garages, Then my stomach twisted. One of the houses looked familiar, the small one-story layout, the detached garage, the weirdly shaped lawn with a patch of dead grass in the left corner. I stared at the blocky model, my mouth going dry. It was my house, my actual house, in rural Oregon, a place I never posted about online. My hands shook as I typed, "What is this? Is this a mod? How do you know where I live?" Observer walked right up the driveway of the virtual house, right up to the window that corresponded to the real-world window next to my PC. He turned to face the glass. "Observer, you have a nice setup, but you should fix that flickering porch light." The world slowed. My porch light, the one outside my real window, had been flickering for 2 days. Nobody knew about that. Nobody. My chest tightened. My breathing turned shallow. I stood up from my chair, panic rising like a tide. I peeked out the blinds just a sliver. The porch light flickered in the exact rhythm Observer described. I stumbled back. I moved the mouse aiming for the exit button, but a message popped up in bright red system text. "You cannot log out while in combat. Combat with who?" Then a sound came through my headset. Not game audio, not a monster growl, not music. A real sound. From outside my house, a metal latch being lifted. Soft, slow, unmistakable. I froze. The noise wasn't from the game. It came from the side of my real house. The crawlspace door. The one that led underneath the floorboards of the living room where I was standing. On the screen, Observer typed, "I'm coming up." That was the moment everything inside me broke. My hands went numb. My heartbeat felt like it was punching holes through my ribs. Under my feet, beneath the old wood plank flooring, something scraped. Then it moved. Someone was crawling beneath my house, coming toward the exact room where I stood. I backed up slowly, unable to tear my eyes away from the floor, the sound growing louder. Scrape. Shuffle. Scrape. The game screen glowed from the living room. I should have unplugged everything. I should have run. Instead, dread pinned me to the spot. And then my in-game character walked into the virtual kitchen. I wasn't touching the keyboard, I wasn't near the computer, but Strider moved exactly where I moved. He mimicked my real position in the house. He was tracking me. A new message appeared. "Observer. You picked up the knife. Predictable. I hadn't picked up anything yet." That's when I noticed the green privacy indicator on my phone. The one showing the microphone camera was active, was glowing. He was watching me. Live through my own phone. The scraping beneath the house stopped. Then, right below the hallway vent, someone knocked on the floor from underneath. The knock beneath the floor vent wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was soft, almost polite, like someone wanted me to know he was there and that he wasn't in a hurry. I stared at the vent cover from across the kitchen, my breath frozen in my chest. The vent sat in the hallway floor a few feet from the living room, just a simple white metal grate held in place by gravity. Nothing more, but I could hear breathing rising up from the darkness beneath it. Slow, wet, heavy. I backed farther into the kitchen, my hand blindly searching the counter, until I grabbed the chef's knife I'd seen earlier. My hand trembled so badly that the blade nearly slipped from my grip. On the monitor in the living room, glowing sickly in the dark, the in-game Observer character stood over the virtual vent, mirroring exactly where the real vent sat on my floor. Observer. Here I am. The real vent rattled. Metal scraped against metal, vibrating the floorboards. My heart hammered so hard my vision blurred. The vent cover began to lift. Not fast, not violently, slowly, steadily, as if savoring my fear. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the refrigerator. The knife shook uncontrollably in my hand. A pale hand slid up through the opening. Fingers first long gray dirt stained, then a wrist. Then another hand gripping the edge of the vent from below, and then a head. A man's head rose from the crawlspace like some subterranean creature climbing out of its nest. He wore something over his face, pantyhose, or some kind of thin black fabric. It pressed his features flat, distorting him into an uncanny, unnatural shape. But the eyes were clear through the mesh, wide, unblinking, reflecting the hallway light like an animal's. He stared at me, not moving, not climbing out, just staring from floor level, half emerged from the darkness, as if enjoying the moment. My nerves snapped. I lunged forward, screaming, and slashed down with the knife. He vanished. Dropped back into the crawl space instantly like a trapdoor spider retreating. My knife cut through empty air and clanged violently against the metal edge of the vent, sending sparks across the hardwood. I staggered backward, nearly falling. A distorted voice echoed from the vent, the metal ductwork warping the sound into something inhuman. "Come down, Strider. The map is bigger down here." That was enough. I bolted. The house blurred as I sprinted toward the front door, adrenaline drowning out everything except survival instinct. My bare feet slapped against the wood floor as I fumbled with the deadbolt. For a moment, my slippery hands couldn't get the lock turned. Behind me, from the crawl space entrance, I heard movement, fast movement. The latch clicked, the knob turned, the door flew open. I stumbled out into the cold morning air, almost falling onto the front porch. I didn't stop. I tore down the driveway across the gravel and toward the main road. I didn't scream at first. I didn't even look back. My mind was too flooded with raw terror. When I reached the asphalt of the rural highway, I finally turned and looked at my house. The front door was wide open, but no one was there. Not in the doorway, not in the yard, not under the porch. It was like he'd evaporated back into the shadows. A logging truck barreled down the road. I waved my arms frantically until the driver braked hard, air brakes shrieking. He jumped down from the cab, yelling, "What the hell happened to you?" I must have looked deranged, barefoot, shaking, covered in sweat, holding a kitchen knife like a lunatic. I managed one sentence: "Someone's in my house." The police investigation. The response that followed was unlike anything I'd seen. Patrol cars, deputies, even a K-9 unit. They swept the entire house, the crawl space, the yard, the tree line. They found signs. The vent cover removed. The crawl space door unlatched. Footprints in the dirt under the house. A nest, a literal nest, made of a sleeping bag, food wrappers, water bottles, and a bucket full of waste. He'd been living there. For how long? Days, weeks, months? The thought turned my stomach. Then they found the wiring. Someone had spliced directly into my mainline cable connection, outside running a thin Ethernet cable through the crawl space and drilling a tiny hole up through the floor behind my desk. From there, it plugged into my router. He wasn't just playing on the server, he had been hosting the server. From under my house. My skin crawled. Cybercrimes came to look at my PC. But when they turned it on, the Ethereum client was gone, completely deleted. The executable, the folder, everything, erased. They didn't do it, I didn't do it, someone else had. Only one file remained on my desktop, created 15 minutes before the power was cut. Patch notes. Xed. My hand shook as I opened it. It contained only one line, update 1.1, player Strider removed. Reason map expansion complete. Real-world integration successful. Searching for new host. I stared at the words numb. There was no explanation, no traceable origin, no IP address logged. The police asked if I had enemies. I didn't. Family issues, number ex-girlfriends. I laughed no. Anyone online you pissed off? Not to that degree. They never found him. He vanished into the Oregon woods. Maybe he'd been watching other houses. Maybe he'd lived under someone else's floor before mine. Maybe he found someone new afterward. I broke my lease the next week and moved to an apartment complex 3 stories up. No crawl space, no ground level windows. Safe, high up, visible. I threw away my computer and my phone and every electronic in that house that connected to anything. I haven't gamed since. But the story doesn't end there. A month ago, I got a piece of junk mail at my new apartment. A standard flyer for a new internet provider. Nothing unusual. Except at the bottom, printed so faintly I almost missed it, was a line of binary code. I stared at it for an hour before finally translating it. I see you. The letter came with no return address, and the porch light in my apartment hallway. The one down the hall from my door started flickering that same night. If you ever find a private server for an old game you used to love, and it feels empty too empty, like it's waiting for you. Don't log in. Don't download it. Don't play it. Because you're not revisiting your childhood. You're inviting something in. I live in a high-rise in Chicago, far away from ground-level windows and dark basements. But this happened about 4 years ago when I was living in a damp, garden-level apartment in Seattle. It was during that weird transitional period in gaming tech when virtual reality was just starting to get really good wireless headsets, hand tracking, and mixed reality, where the cameras on the outside of the headset could show you your actual room in black and white grain. I was working as a QA tester for a mid-sized indie studio, which sounds like a dream job, but mostly involved walking into walls for 8 hours a day to see if the game would crash. Because of my job, I often brought dev kits and prototypes home. Living alone in a gloomy city where it rained 9 months out of the year, I spent most of my nights with a plastic brick strapped to my face, escaping into digital worlds. It was a Friday night in November. The rain was hammering against the small rectangular windows positioned high up on my living room wall. The kind typical of basement apartments where you can only see the feet of people walking by outside. My girlfriend Emily had broken up with me a week prior, citing that I was emotionally distant, so the apartment felt emptier and colder than usual. I had brought home a prototype headset from a defunct startup. It wasn't something my company was working on. I'd bought it off a liquidation site for parts. It was heavy industrial looking and had these massive insect-like camera lenses on the front for high-fidelity pass-through. I plugged it into my PC tower around 1100 p.m. There was no brand name on the boot screen, just a terminal command line that scrolled green text. It loaded into a default lobby, a white sterile void. I was digging through the file directory looking for any pre-installed demos when I found a file named cleanhouse.exe. Thinking it was a tech demo for a cleaning simulator or maybe a tactical shooter, I launched it. The screen went black. Then the pass-through cameras activated. Suddenly, I was looking at my own living room. The quality was unsettlingly hyper-realistic. Usually, pass-through feeds are grainy or warped like looking through a fishbowl. But this was crisp. I could see the dust on my coffee table. I could see the rain streaks on the high windows. I could see the pile of pizza boxes I hadn't thrown out. A text prompt floated in the air in front of me. Scanning environment. Please stand still. I stood in the center of my living room. A blue laser grid swept across the room, mapping the geometry of my sofa, my TV, the hallway leading to the bedroom, and the bathroom door. Scan complete. Prepare for entry. Cool, I muttered, adjusting the strap. Home invasion survival horror. Classic. I expected zombies to start breaking through the walls or aliens to beam down. I pulled up my virtual hands. They were rigged to look like realistic human hands, copying my exact skin tone. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. I walked around my apartment in the game and in real life. The silence was absolute. The game didn't add spooky music. It didn't add ambient noise. It just amplified the sound of the rain outside using the headset's external microphones. Then I saw it. In the corner of my vision near the hallway leading to my bedroom, a notification icon appeared. It was a simple red exclamation mark floating in the air. I walked over to it. As I got closer, the text expanded, "Entry point detected." I looked at the bathroom door. It was closed. I lived alone, and I always kept it closed. Then the doorknob on the screen began to rattle. I froze. The audio was binaural, perfectly spatial. It sounded exactly like someone was shaking the bathroom door handle from the inside. "Okay, good audio engine," I said aloud, trying to break the tension. My voice sounded flat in the empty apartment. I reached out with my virtual hand to open the door. My real hand gripped the cold metal of the real doorknob. I turned it. The door creaked open. The bathroom was dark. I stared into the darkness on the screen. The pass-through cameras adjusted the exposure, brightening the image. The bathroom was empty, just the shower curtain and the sink. I exhaled, a laugh escaping my lips. Jump scare coming in 3, 2. I yanked the shower curtain back. Nothing. Boring, I whispered. I turned around to walk back to the living room. That's when I saw him. Standing at the far end of the living room, right in front of the high windows, was a figure. It wasn't a zombie. It wasn't a monster. It was a man. He was wearing a yellow raincoat, the heavy rubberized kind construction workers wear. The hood was up, casting his face in shadow. He was just standing there, dripping wet. I stopped dead in my tracks. The graphics were too good. The water dripping off his coat hit the virtual floor with realistic splashes. "Who are you?" I asked, assuming it was an NPC. The figure didn't move. I took a step forward. "Is this an interaction? Do I have a weapon?" I looked down at my hands. Empty. The figure took a step toward me. Squelch. The sound of a wet boot hitting the laminate floor. I took the headset off. I needed to check. It was a reflex. I lifted the heavy goggles onto my forehead, blinking as my eyes adjusted to the dimmer light of the real room. The living room was empty. No man in a raincoat. Just the windows, the rain outside, and the silent apartment. Jesus. I rubbed my eyes, getting too immersed. I laughed nervously. It was a good trick. The game renders an intruder. You take the headset off to check, realize you're safe, and then put it back on to continue the thrill. It was effective psychological horror. I pulled the headset back down over my eyes. The pass-through feed reactivated. The man in the raincoat was closer. He had moved 10 feet while I had the headset off. He was now standing right next to my sofa. My heart skipped a beat. A chill crawled up the back of my neck. That wasn't how the game should work. If I took the headset off, the game loop should pause, or at least the tracking should suspend. I stared at him. He was tall, maybe 6'2". The raincoat was stained with grease or mud. Then he raised a hand. He pointed at the ceiling. A text box appeared above his head. "They can see the light." "What light?" I whispered. Suddenly the power in my apartment went out. In real life. The hum of the refrigerator died. The streetlights outside the high windows filtered in, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. But the headset didn't turn off. It had an internal battery. The screen glowed bright, blinding me against the sudden darkness. In the headset display, the apartment was now illuminated by a greenish night vision mode from the pass-through cameras. The man in the raincoat was gone. I spun around looking for the glitchy NPC. "Where did you go?" 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They didn't come from the headphones. I felt the vibration in the floor. They came from the front door of my apartment. I stood there in the dark, the green glowing headset strapped to my face, looking toward the front door. Through the night vision feed of the camera, I could see the door clearly. The deadbolt was turning. I knew I had locked it. I always locked it. I watched on the screen as the silver latch slowly mechanically retracted into the door frame. I ripped the headset off, throwing it onto the couch. The room was pitch black. I scrambled backward, tripping over the coffee table and crashing to the floor. "Who's there?" I screamed. The front door swung open. A silhouette stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights of the apartment building. It was a man. He was wearing a yellow raincoat. I scrambled backward on my hands and heels, my fingernails scraping against the cheap laminate flooring until my back hit the kitchen island. The room was pitch black, save for the faint green luminescence coming from the headset lying on the couch and the ambient city glow filtering through the high windows. The man in the doorway didn't rush me. He didn't scream. He stepped inside the water from his coat, pooling around his boots, and calmly closed the door behind him. Click. He engaged the deadbolt. "You have good reflexes," he said. His voice was gravelly wet, as if he had a cold. It was the same voice I had imagined the figure in the headset having, but hearing it vibrate through the air of my real apartment made my stomach drop. "Take whatever you want," I stammered, my voice sounding pathetic and small. "My wallet is on the counter. The TV, just take it." The man turned his head slowly, looking around the darkened apartment. He wasn't looking at my TV. He wasn't looking at my wallet. He walked past me, ignoring me entirely, his heavy rubber boots squeaking against the floorboards. He walked straight to the couch. He picked up the VR headset. The green light from the lenses cast a ghoulish glow onto his face. He was older than I expected. Gray stubble-deep pockmarks on his cheeks and eyes that looked dead devoid of any adrenaline or fear. He looked like a man doing a boring routine job. "This," he said, holding up the prototype. "Where did you get this?" I bought it online. A liquidation site. Please, I don't know anything." He turned the headset over in his hands, inspecting the sensor array on the front. "You ran the executable, clean house?" It wasn't a question. "I thought it was a game," I whispered. He scoffed a dry, humorless sound. "It's not a game, it's a rehearsal tool." He looked at me, then really looked at me, and for a second, I thought he was going to kill me right there. He reached into his coat pocket. I flinched, curling into a ball, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a USB drive. He walked over to my PC tower, which was still humming. I realized then that my computer was on a UPS backup battery, which was why it hadn't died when the apartment power was cut. The headset had been running off the PC's backup power. He plugged the drive in. He began typing furiously on my keyboard. "What are you doing?" I asked, adrenaline starting to turn into confusion. "Erasing your mistake," he muttered. "You pinged the server when you launched the scan. You just broadcast your GPS location to people who don't like to be watched." Clack, clack, clack. The sound of the mechanical keys was deafening in the quiet apartment. "Go to the bathroom, Doug," he commanded, not looking away from the screen. "What? Go to the bathroom, lock the door, sit in the tub. Do not come out until you hear the front door close. If you come out before then," he stopped typing and looked at me over his shoulder, "I won't be able to help you." I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled up and ran into the bathroom, slamming the door and twisting the lock. I collapsed into the empty bathtub, pulling the shower curtain closed, shivering uncontrollably in the dark. I sat there for what felt like hours. I could hear him moving around out there. I heard the sound of heavy objects being moved. I heard the crunch of plastic being stepped on. Then I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. It sounded like a countdown. Then the front door opened. The wind and rain rushed in. Then the door slammed shut. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. Silence. I slowly climbed out of the tub. My legs were numb. I unlocked the bathroom door with trembling fingers and peeked out. The apartment was empty. The power was back on. He must have flipped the breaker panel in the utility closet before leaving. The living room was a wreck. My PC tower was on the floor, the side panel ripped off, the hard drives missing. The VR headset was gone. But on the coffee table where the headset had been, there was a sticky note. It had 2 words written on it in jagged handwriting: "Wrong house." I called the police. They came, took a report, and dusted for prints. They found nothing. No fingerprints on the door, no mud that could be traced to a specific location. The man in the yellow raincoat was a ghost. When I tried to explain the VR program, the officer looked at me like I was crazy. "You're saying a video game summoned a hitman to your house?" he asked, clicking his pen. "No," I said, rubbing my temples. I think it was mapping software for tactical teams or burglars, and I accidentally downloaded a mission file for a real target." The officer sighed and closed his notebook. "We'll keep an eye out, sir." I moved out the next week. I broke my lease, paid the fee, and moved to Chicago. I got a job in a different industry. I don't work in QA anymore. I don't touch dev kits. But the fear didn't leave when I left Seattle. About 6 months ago, I was walking to the train station here in Chicago. It was rush hour, crowded, loud. I was wearing a pair of noise-canceling headphones, listening to a podcast, watching the people blur past me. For a split second, the audio in my headphones glitched, a burst of static, and then, just for a flicker of a moment, my vision shifted. It was like the real world dropped in resolution. The texture of the concrete sidewalk smoothed out. The faces of the people passing me became low poly, faceless masks. And floating above the head of a man in a business suit walking 10 feet in front of me was a red icon. Target. I blinked and it was gone. The world was normal again. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, hyperventilating, tearing the headphones off my head. I looked around wildly. The man in the suit was gone, swallowed by the crowd. I don't know what that software did to me. I don't know if it modified my neural pathways or if I'm just suffering from severe flashbacks. But sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment and the lighting is just right, I see the grid, a faint blue laser grid scanning the geometry of my room. And I know that somewhere on a server in a dark basement, someone is looking at a screen. They see my couch. They see my TV. They see me. And they are waiting for the command, "Prepare for entry."